So hello and welcome everyone to this new video about front-end development using JavaScript, HTML and CSS. In this video, we'll be continuing our website for evaluating the movies. So as you know from the previous video, this website is inspired by the Prime Video. So today we will be adding two main things. First, we will be adding a sticky header, and then we will be making a responsive grid. Let me show you what I mean by opening the Amazon Prime website. So this is the Amazon Prime website. In the previous video, we already implemented a header which looks like the header here above with the logo and location and this search bar here and some of the buttons here to the right. What we will do in this video, we will be making a sticky header. So this header will be looking like this one. I will not be implementing all the buttons. I will just add some buttons and make some styles which look like this. And the most important property of this header is that when you scroll the page, this header scrolls up, as you can see, or down till it reaches the top of the page, and then it does not scroll up anymore. So you can see it will always appear to you here if you are scrolling to the top. We will also try to make gradient buttons which look like this one also here for this sticky header, and then we will be implementing the grid here where these movies are shown. So you can see now that this grid is called responsive because it changed the number of columns depending on the size of the website. You can see that we have now 4 columns here are displayed. Now if I made this smaller, you can see now we have 3. If I made it even smaller, you can see that we have now 1 big column here. So this is called the responsive web development, and we'll be doing that too. This we will implement using this media query here, and the media query started by the character at, then media. So here we define the media. This could be the screen. For example, in our case here, I'm showing this on the screen of my lab. This could be also print if you want to print this page. For this tutorial, I will be only using screen. Then we have here an AND operator, and here we can add more filters. What we will implement in this tutorial will be depending on the width of the website. So here, for example, saying max width 1000, that means this query selector will be selected whenever we are on a screen, so not on a print, and when the width is at the maximum 1000 pixels. And whenever this query is selected, what is inside here is defined. So we can change, for example, a class, can change width, color, or any other property for a div or any other HTML element. Yeah, at the end of this tutorial, our website will look something like this figure here below. So let's start coding. In the previous video, we had this evaluate HTML file. We have the images here with the icons and also the images here of the nature, which we will use instead of the movies. And we also, in the previous tutorial, filled this CSS here called headers with the styles to make our header similar to the one from the Prime website. For this tutorial, I added 2 sheets, as you can see here, one called content, one called sticky headers. So this sticky headers I will be using to make a sticky header similar to the one we've seen in the Prime website. And the content here, we'll use it to make our grid change the number of columns depending on the width of the browser. So let me show you the changes that I made for this HTML page. So in the previous tutorial, we had this header here. Here I did not make any changes, so I only added now a new header. This header we will make it sticky, so that's why I called the class here sticky header. Inside this header I added an inner div. You can see that this inner div surrounds these divs here, and these divs will be our buttons. So we'll have a home, movies, TV shows, live, and evaluation. And for each one of these buttons I added a class, as you can see here. So all these classes start with sh for sticky header and then the name of the button. I also added these classes here inside this style sheet, sticky headers. So this would be the style for the header. This is for the inner div. This is a duplicate, we can delete it. And then for the buttons, as you can see, I will be using also combining here using this comma operator. We will come to that later. We will also be changing the styles on the hover. That's why you see this here. And then an individual style for each one of these buttons. So that's it for the sticky header. The second part here, which I changed, is the content below. And here I added one div. I called it content div, as you can see here. And this div surrounds all those divs here. And as you can see, there are divs with only one image inside. And this image comes from this folder here. So I have these 4 images and I like added as many of those as I can. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I start again from image 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, just to have lots of content then where we can scroll and see what's happening. As you can see also here, there are only 2 styles. That's why if we went to content here, you will find content div and then content item. For styling the image inside, I'm using this child selector, which is simply one white space here in between, as you can see, and I will also be using the hover over this image. So here we have much less styles and components as the previous tutorial. So I hope that this tutorial will not be as long as the previous one. This is all the changes in the content in this file. As you can see, I also link these style sheets here in the header. So let us run this evaluate.html in the live browser before we start editing. So as you can see here, this is our header which we styled from the previous tutorial, and these are the new divs which we added for the sticky header. And as you can see, here are the divs containing the images for the content. So let's start now by styling this header here, and for that I will put the web page side by side with the VS Code. First we want this sticky header to be flex, so we will use the display flex. We'll do the same for the inner div. Now as you can see, we have all these items on the row since the default direction for the flex is row. Let's make more space between these items. So we'll add padding for the inner div, then also for each button. Let me save. Now you can see we have space between them. So I wanted to make the evaluation button the one selected. As you can see here, the one selected, for example, now is home. It has a gradient. For me, I will make the evaluation button here looks like that one with the gradient. That's why it's not here. Then let me add the padding for this button also, evaluation. And now they look all the same. Let us align now the items inside the inner div, the center. And for the outer div, we will use space around to justify the content. That means now that this sticky header will add space around the items inside it to justify the items. Let me change the background color so that you can see now where this header is. So you can see now that these spaces, let me choose darker color. So you can see now that this header is taking the whole space here. And for the inner div, let us also choose a color. And as you can see here now, we have the inner div which take only this side, and the header which surround it adds spaces here from both sides. Let me remove those. As you can see now, when we scroll, the header scrolls with the page. So to make the header sticky, we need to add a property here, position, and we want to put this position to sticky. And we need now to put the top to 0, and let's check that. You can see now the header stays at the top of the page. Now when you scroll down, the header scrolls down. However, when it scrolls up, it scrolls a little bit and then it's stuck here at the top. Now let's make the style similar to this one here. So we need to change the background color first, and we will do that for the inner header. So the color now appear here, and let us add a radius to the bottom 2 corners here, similar to these 2 here. So now you can see the border here. Let me make it larger just so you can see it. And let us make this color maybe a little bit lighter. So one thing about this color here is that, as you can see, we are using RGBA, and that A here stands for alpha, and we are using for the alpha 0.4. And that means we can see through this color. Let me make this larger. And now the opacity of this background is less, so we see less through it. To see that, let me make the browser smaller. You can see the image a little bit below it, but not that much. If we went back to 4, now you can see more of the image. Maybe I should put this to 5 or 6. Let's try 5 or 6. Yeah, so 6 looks good. Let's change the font size and the font. So we made the font smaller and the size more. Let us add also some margin between these buttons here. So you can see now the distances between the button is bigger. And let us change the hover style to make it similar to this one here. So when we hover, we want background to be white, and it has a radius here, as you can see, and the font color to be black. So for color black and background color is white. So now when we hover over these buttons, you can see that. Let's change now the cursor to pointer and give the corner some radius here. So cursor, pointer, and border radius, let's put it to something like 4 pixels and save. Now you can see they are round and we have the correct cursor. So let's do that for the evaluation button. Now that's it for all these buttons here. What's left is to make a gradient for the evaluation button. And to explain more about the gradient, I already prepared this HTML page here. So let me run this page in the live server, and let me also arrange them side by side. So here now on the right, you see all the different styles of the gradient. And to the left here, you see the styles which are used to render these gradients. Let's go through them one by one. So first, this div here in the top, the style of this div, as you can see here, we are using a linear gradient from a color which is yellow to a color which is green. So it starts here at the top by a yellow color and it goes down till it's green. And in between, it's a linear interpolation of the two colors. And that's it. That's all what we need now for making this gradient color here. Now in the bottom color, we have added a third color here. So we have a linear gradient which is changing from yellow to green and then from green to yellow. And you can see that here. So we have yellow to green and then green to yellow. Basically, we can add here as much color as we want. So we can, for example, we can again add a green and another yellow, and the gradient will happen in order here. So we have now yellow, then green to yellow, then again yellow to green and green to yellow. So we have 4 transitions, as you can see here. So another parameter for the linear gradient which we can use is the direction. In these first 2 elements, we did not change the direction, so the direction was from top down. However, we can change this direction and we can use an angle for that, for example 45 degrees, and now you can see that the color start this corner and change from yellow to green and then from green to yellow. The changes as before, the only difference now is that it goes at 45 degrees like this. So if you want other directions, you can change this angle till you get the direction that you want. Let's try, for example, 90 degrees. And now you can see that color is changing on the horizontal axis. So that's all the parameters which we need for a linear gradient. There are another kind of gradient, which is a radial gradient. So instead of going lines, as you can see here, all the line here has the same color and going down like this. The radial gradient will start at a point, and all the circles which are centered at this point will have the same colors. So we'll have here one color, same color, and so on. Whenever we go away from this radial, from this point, we will have a different color. However, all the points which are on a circle centered at this point here will have the same color. So the simplest way to define a radial gradient is also to define a color transition, as you can see here. So from yellow to green. Then here, for example, we added more colors. So you can add more colors. So we started by yellow, then changed to green, and then it's changing to black. You can add even more if you want. Then we have this syntax here, which help us to change the point where the gradient color starts. And this syntax looks a little bit weird. For example, here we are telling it like 50%, so that you can think of it as which point we want to change and where we want to put it. So I usually like always to target this 50%, so that means the point in the middle, and then put it at some other position. For example, here the other position is the same, and that's why there is no change here. And that's this div here. Let me change the color so that you can see the div easily. I will start from red here, so you can see this div here. So we're starting now by red, going to green, and then from green to black. And we put the center at a center. That means we did not change the position. However, let us take the center and put it maybe at the top here. And for that, we need 50% on the X and 0% on the Y. So let me change then this to 0 and save. And you can see now the gradient starts here and goes away. If you want to start at this corner, for example, we can put it at 100% here on the X and 0 at the Y. So it starts from this side here. And that's it for the radial gradient. The third kind of gradient which we have is a conic gradient, and this is shown here. And the transition here starts on a line here, as you can see, and then the color changes in this direction here when we go around till we reach this point. So we start by yellow, and when we are moving on a circle like this, we'll go to green, and then we start moving to black. So maybe to have a better effect, maybe we should end up also by yellow. Let me add yellow here. So you can see we started here by yellow, went to green, black, and then again yellow. And you can see now this looks like a cone. Maybe it would look better if I removed the black, for example. Maybe not. And finally, here in this example, I'm showing you how you can combine more effects. So here we have an outer div, and inside it there is another div. And for the outer div, we use a gradient, and I'm using the same gradient for the inner div. That's why you see it here also with the same effect. And notice also I'm using a border with radius 50. That's why this div now here looks like a circle. And to have a different effect, for example, now we can change maybe the position of this gradient. Let's try to make one of them maybe start at the top. And now you can see that you're changing this point in the middle. And that's it. I mean, you can combine as much of these as you want to make any kind of button or effects which you like. One kind of effects of buttons which very simple and people usually like is using this linear gradient. Let me show you this. So I will add here a div, and yeah, let me give it a width and height, and let me put the style. Let me keep only the width and height here and put the style in a class. And let's add a style here, and let's call it test button. So you can see this is the button here which we added. Let me make it a little bit smaller in the height, and let me add some break here so that we can focus on this button here at the top. And now what I wanted to do is when we hover over this button, I want to reverse the order of the colors. So instead of starting by yellow, we start by green, and let me save. Now you can see, so this is nice button effect. Let's put the cursor also to pointer, and yeah, of course you can add border to it, and then it will become even prettier. That's all what I wanted to see about the gradient. Let's now go back to our sticky header and made the evaluation button using the gradient. So in the evaluation button, I will add this radial gradient. And as you can see here, I'm putting the center at the top of the button as we saw in the examples before. And here we're having a transition from this color to this color here. And again, here we are using some alpha. Let me save and test this. So you can see now the button here looks very similar to this one, I would say. Maybe not exactly, but almost, I would say. And that's it basically for our sticky header. Let us now go to the content. Now for the content, we go here inside our content style sheet. As you can see here, we have divs, which by default takes a display of block. That's why they are taking the whole line here. And you can see also that the images have different sizes and they are just displayed like this. The first thing I want to do here is actually to change the style of the images. So I want to make them all having the same size and change the pointer and also give them some border here. And for that, we use this selector here. So we are inside the class content item and the image. So I made the width and height 200 pixels, and I give the radius a little bit of border. Notice now all the images looks the same, and we want now to make them appear as in a grid. And for that, we want to style the content div, and we will be using now the display style grid. So as you can see now, if I save, nothing happened. And that's because we need to define the number of columns. And for that, we use a property called grid template columns. And here we can define how many columns we want and the size of each column. So for example, I can have two columns, maybe one of them 25%, let's say, and the other one maybe 70%, and save. And now you can see we have two columns. The first one is not that large while the second one is larger. Let's reverse them. So make the first one larger and the second one smaller. So you can see now this div here is taking most of the size. So what I want to do is actually to make this grid by default having 4 columns, and these 4 columns each will have 25% of the grid size. So as you can see now we have like 4 columns. Let me make this bigger, and yeah, we can scroll down. As you can see now, when we change the size, these divs will become closer to each other. But as you can see, we still have these 4 columns. As you can see, we want to change that. So when this grid is smaller, we want to have less number of columns. And that can be done using the media query, as we've seen in the introduction. And that starts with @media. And as you can see here, we have an image suggestion to use screen. I will use that. So we have now @media screen, and I want to define a max width. So that we write it between these two brackets. We write max width. And let's say now when this max width is 1000 pixels, I want to have less number of columns. Now when the browser width is below 1000, whatever styles wrote in here will be used to render the components. So let me pick the content div style and put it here. I don't want to change the display, but I want to change how many columns do I have. And let me put 3 columns, each one of maybe 33%. And now let me save. Now when we make this page smaller, so as you notice now we have 3 columns. When I go a little bit larger, we have 4. Now we are above 1000. Now here we are below 1000. However, now when we go smaller, this is not changing. So And when we go now smaller, maybe we want 2 columns, then maybe even 1. To do that, we use another media query. So I will copy this and I will just change the 1000. Maybe let me put it as 800. And at 800, we'll switch to 2 columns, each maybe 50% of the screen. And let me save. Now you can see it's already switched to 2 because we are below 800. I mean, till here we have 2 columns, now 3. You can notice now how it's switched. And finally, maybe at 500, let us put it to 1 column. And now when we are very small, we get 1 column, then 2, then 3, and then 4. So and that's it now for this. We have now similar behavior to this one from the Prime website. Maybe one last thing we want to do just to make the image larger when we scroll on top of it. So for that, so we can do that by using the hover over the image here. And let me give the image larger size. So let's make the width to 250 pixels, and same for the height. Let me save and go back here. Now when we hover over the image, you can see that it comes larger. However, notice that also it's flickering, so it's not appearing on top of the others. What's happening is now this image becoming larger, and then the whole layout should be pushed. So everything which comes after this image will be pushed. So to remove this effect, we can give the image a margin which is minus 25 pixels. Since we are adding 50, this will be completely compensated when we take the half of it here, which is 25. And now you can see, let me make this bigger. Now you can see that the layout does not change, but however the image appear below the other images, as you can see here. So let us avoid that by using position relative for the images, and now you can see the image appear at the top of all the other images around it. So no matter which image I select, this image will appear while the others not. Let's make only 3 rows so that you can see better that this is working now. Yeah. So that's it basically for this tutorial. So now we already have a responsive page, and we already talked about the gradients here, and we have this sticky header. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next videos. Bye.